Hi there. My name is Kelly McCracken. I offer Dubsado services exclusively for wedding professionals and photographers. And I'm here today to talk to you about the booking process, meaning using the proposal, contract, and invoice step in your booking process with your clients. So you can find more about me at kellymccracken.co. That's MCCRACKEN.co or at kellymccracken.co on Instagram. But today, let's just dive right in and I'll show you how we can use Dubsado to help us really up-level that client experience. So first and foremost, before we get started, I think a lot of people miss this step of really spending some time to make sure we have all of the pieces in place to make you successful in Dubsado. So we need things set up before we jump right into designing a proposal and sending it to our clients. So today we're going to first talk about creating your packages and any add-ons, making sure we have all of our pricing and categories set up. I am going to talk to you about if you have an exception for a client where they are maybe adding in a travel fee, or you need to add in a hotel fee or something along those lines that isn't necessarily true for everyone. But we're thinking of these packages as like your basic packages that most people are going to work with. So we're going to show you how to set that up correctly first. Then we can handle any one-offs or changes that need to happen within specific client projects. We're going to make sure our contract is set up first with smart fields to help us fill in all of the missing pieces for our client information that can translate right over to the contract that we don't have to keep duplicating and filling in ourselves. I know it can be really time consuming to create a contract for every single person. So I'm going to show you how to use that along with your proposal step. We also need a payment plan in place. If we're going to connect the invoice, we need to tell it how we want to charge our clients. Are we having them pay in full with a deposit? I'm going to show you how to make sure your payment plan is set up first. So that when we connect all three pieces, we have it all ready to go and we can just put the pieces together. The last two things is we're going to make sure we have our project statuses set up and sending an email template to send the proposal. So what pieces we need in order to send that proposal. So let's head over. I have a sample Dubsado account here that we're just going to dive right into, and we're going to start going over those things. So in Dubsado, under your templates, this is where we're really working with a lot of those pieces that I mentioned, like the forms, which is where our proposal template will live, emails, packages, and payment plans. Today, we're not even going to show you how to use the workflows. We're going to show you how to use the settings to kind of create a sort of automation type step that can do a lot of things in one piece for your clients, rather than using multiple steps to get paid and have a contract signed. So before jumping into the proposal, like I mentioned, we need to take a step back and make sure our packages are set up first. So if you're new to the wedding business, I know that this can be kind of the hardest piece, I think, to kind of narrow down what exactly are you offering in your packages. But if you're a seasoned pro, then you probably know exactly what your packages are. So these can all be changed, but kind of think of them as like your main offerings, the main pricing that you have for your clients, where we have a wedding gold package. I'm kind of thinking of this from a photographer lens, but it could really be anything. Like a wedding planner, anything like that, where we are listing out the item name, which is the gold package here, the description of what's included. One of these, so meaning one package, would be $6,000, for example. This does not have tax because this isn't a taxable item, but the category here is important to have set up from the beginning. So the category is sort of like almost like a hashtag or like a way to search. So under Dubsado's reporting, we're not going to cover this today, but it's just kind of a good setting to know about, where you could go and filter and say, how many gold packages did I sell this year? And then you can see your income based off of this category. There's really no right or wrong way, but I try to say, think of them as like big categories. So if you're a photographer, for example, but you offer weddings, portraits, mini sessions, that might be a good way to categorize your packages. But if your sole offering is weddings, then I would maybe think about categorizing them into each specific type of offering that you're selling to your clients. So this is just an example one here that I had set up. So I did the same thing for a silver, bronze, and some add-ons down here. Just another tip too, something I like to do for my clients is have this big category here that just kind of separates things out. So all I did to create that was I just went and made a blank package. Whoops. And it creates that nice category that you can drag and drop wherever you want it to go. So it's just kind of a nice visual way to see what we're offering to our clients. So I have the main packages at the top here, and then the add-ons that I'd like to offer on my proposal. So an additional hour of photography, for example. I am going to show you this one because we're going to talk about this quantity rate here. So let's just say that your rate was $150 for the hour. We want to make sure that this is set to 1 hour if your clients are going to be able to choose how many hours they want to add on. And I'll show you how to do that in the proposal. But we want this to be set up right here as the price per hour. And I'm going to categorize all of my add-on services under add-ons. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the heirloom wedding album. So this is usually a taxable item, for example. So let's say that if your clients want to add this onto their package, this item needs tax. So we need to tell it first what we want it to be taxed in order for that to be added onto your pricing. So it's not going to tax the entire proposal. It just taxes this one item. So you could definitely learn more. There's a whole course or there's a whole description about tax items. Let's just use this sample one for example, but there is a way to pull in your QuickBooks code so that everything is kind of talking under that same tax code and everything gets categorized the same way. So let's just use that for example, because we only want to tax this one package and we'll save that. Now the engagement session is just set up as a one-time fee. And I'm going to show you how to add in a travel fee. So let's say, for example, you are not sure how far away the wedding is yet, or you haven't done the exact calculation. If you're charging per mile, whatever that state charges, there's a couple different ways you could do this. I'm going to set it up today as we're just going to have it estimated as I'm assuming it's going to be around, let's say $75 for me to travel to this wedding to and from. So I'm going to have just, like I said, estimated so that it's not the exact fee, but on my invoice, I want it to say that the final calculation will be made before final payment is due. So I'm doing this because I want it to be on my invoice where I can go and edit it later, but I want the client to be aware that there is going to be an estimated travel fee here. So I just want it to make sure that it's there. I actually might create a new category here to say that this is a travel fee. And create. Okay, so when you're happy with your packages, we have our standard wedding packages here and any add-ons that we have. This, remember, is client-facing right here. So this line item will be client-facing, which is why I put estimated travel fee. This is just for you up here. So this could definitely be changed. This is just visible to the business owner. All right, so remember, we're going to change that later. We're just using that for now. Oh, and actually one more thing I wanted to mention with the heirloom wedding album. So we talked a little bit about tax, adding tax to this one item. See how down here we can categorize it as services or sales. So I'm going to actually make another category for albums, because for my bookkeeping purposes, this is going to be a sales item that's being taxed. So I want to make sure that those categories line up with that tax charge there. So now once these things are all categorized and taxed properly, it's going to help me later on the back end when I need to do any bookkeeping or reporting based on what type of packages were purchased or what items were purchased. Okay, so once we're happy with our packages and have all the details in there, we're going to now move on to payment plans. So I'm going to create a new payment plan template. And I'm going to say that this is for weddings, wedding photography. And I want this to be paid in 2 installments. So I'm going to actually click this button twice, add installment, add installment. And you'll see then it creates these 2 equal payments. Whoops, here. So if you click that first, it's going to set it up right away to be divided equally. So when I come in to create the due date, this payment isn't going to be due until the contract is signed. Because the client's going to select their package, be taken directly to the contract, and the invoice last, I want to set this up to be due at the time the contract is signed. So I'm going to set it to 0 days after contract signed by client. Now you can decide how you want to charge your clients, whether it's 50-50, a fixed percentage, maybe it's 30% upfront, or maybe you have a fixed deposit. Let's say your fixed deposit is $1,000. So meaning no matter what the total charge is, they're going to be asked to pay the $1,000. You can add reminders onto these payment plans if you'd like. I usually don't for the very first one, just in case the client signs and then it's going to send them an email 3 days later that says, hey, remember, your payment is past due. Maybe that makes sense for your clients. Maybe it doesn't. You can kind of just make that decision. I know sometimes, especially for weddings, parents are helping pay or they need to go and move money around where it may take a couple of days for them to make that payment. So it's totally up to you how you want to handle that first reminder. I personally don't add them usually for the first payment, but for the second payment, I will add reminders at that point. So now we're going to use this relative due date again, but we're going to work it around the project date, meaning whenever the wedding is for the client. So let's say that payment is due 30 days before. You could see that we can choose from before project start date, after, before the end date, or after project end date. So I'm going to say I want it to send before the project start date. And I'm going to use this divide equally now, so that if I change that travel fee, for example, or they added in something that wasn't on the original proposal, it's going to still require them to pay the full remaining amount, no matter what that is. Rather than locking it into a percentage or a fixed amount, I just want it to be an equal payment of what's remaining on the invoice. And now here's where we can go and add reminders. So no email will be sent in a payment plan unless we have a reminder set up. So I usually default to 2 days before the due date. You can write your own email in your canned emails and pull in from here, or we can use the default payment plan reminder. I'm going to use that for today. I'm going to add another reminder that's set to 0 days before the due date. And this one is going to say, it's due today with this balance. And same thing, I'm going to send another 2 days after due date. So if the client pays beforehand, let's say that they pay when they get this first email, the rest of the emails will not be sent. It will only send if they haven't paid their balance. So again, you can kind of pick and choose what works best for your clients. I know sometimes maybe they need a week in advance to get the money or figure out, oh yeah, I need to have this payment coming up. You can play around with what works best, but usually I default to 2 days before. It will say, hey, you have an upcoming payment. On the due date, it will say it's due today. And 2 days after, it's late today. So you can play around with any of those emails. Dubsado does offer some here. See how they say due today, past due, or upcoming. And you can pull from there, or you can write your own. But it's using the smart fields to pull in the remaining amounts and the due dates. All right, so we have our packages set up. We have our payment plans. Let's talk about the project statuses. So one thing you can do here is use these project statuses to kind of keep track of where clients are in the process of booking with you. So when a client has not yet paid or signed your contract, they're still considered a lead. As soon as they pay and sign, now they're considered a job. So you can customize any of these project statuses here to what makes sense for your clients. Like I said, if you have like multiple services, like if you have, let's say, your wedding planner and you have full wedding planning or partial wedding planning or day of coordination, it may make sense to categorize them like that. It may make sense to keep track of who's paid their deposit, who's paid in full. Or if you offer like portraits, weddings, minis, you may want to categorize them like that. I'm going to, for this example, just say that this is a wedding that's now considered a job once we booked, and you can move them around as necessary. And I'll show you why in the settings, why we want this project status here for you. If we're not using a workflow, it's a nice automation that happens in the proposal step. Okay, and so the last thing we're going to talk about are the emails before we start putting things together. So two things I want to point out to you. Up here at the top, there's this edit templates button. And I know when I first started learning Dubsado, I always forgot about these templates up here, and I would be confused about where was this email coming from? So the one I want to show you today is the send form. When you open up this email, this is just the default email anytime you're going to send a form to a client. So it's using this smart field for a form to send any type of form at all. So when we go to send the form to our client, it's going to default to this email. So I recommend keeping this pretty generic and pretty straightforward, and you're welcome to use this absolutely. But we can also access any of the canned emails down here when we go to send this to a client. So it doesn't have to be this one. We can use, Dubsado provides some sample starter ones down here. So we can use that one to get us started. So I'm going to pick this client's send proposal email to help us start to customize that and make it feel a little more personal. So the subject line is going to be your proposal from, and it would say your business name right here. Now, you may choose to address this to both clients, especially for a wedding. You may say partner 1 and partner 2. Let's say we want to do that. So we have the main client first name, and then we want to add their partner's name. So we're going to choose the smart field client, alternate client first name. So now when we go to send it, it's going to already pull up their names. Maybe let's say that you had a consultation call with them. I had a great time on our call learning more about your wedding. And let's say we want to add in the date of their wedding there. So we can go to Smart Fields, date. Actually, I'm going to go to project, Smart Fields project. The project start is going to be the date of the wedding. Your proposal is linked below. Please open it up and follow the prompts to complete your booking. So maybe I want to say, please open it up. And once you select the package you would like, you will be taken directly to your contract and invoice, just to let them know that those are the steps we'd like them to take. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reply to this email. Thanks. So you'll see here that this smart field, this is what's going to allow us to send this canned email with a form, meaning a proposal, to the client using this smart field here. So I always say to try to be careful with these brackets and not to type them in. If you delete them by accident, what we're going to do is select it again from the smart fields link and form link here. So if we try to send that proposal to a client with this email and it doesn't have this smart field, it's going to show an error and it's not going to work. Dubsado needs to know what to link it to. So we could send this one form at a time using the smart field here. You can kind of go crazy with how much you want to personalize it. It's kind of a nice way to do some of the heavy lifting for you without having to write it all yourself. What I mean by that is you could add in like where the location is if you already know that. The location name of like the wedding venue, let's say, for example, and mention something personal about that. But we want it to try to be as personal as possible without you having to write the same things over and over and over again. I just deleted that little bracket by accident, so I'm just going to put it back in because I don't like to type them in. It doesn't always work. Okay, so once you're happy with that email, we're going to save and close that. So let's go back to our list here. So we're going to make sure we made packages and add-ons. We're going to talk about the contract next. We made our payment plan, project statuses, and we have an email to use. So let's talk about the contract and then we'll talk about the proposal. So for today's purposes, I'm just using the sample contract that was in Dubsado. But it's really important to, again, pay attention to the smart fields. The smart fields is what allows things to all talk to each other. Once we've gathered some information from your client, from your lead form, for example, or for if you filled it in, we want it to carry through to everything else, like your contract and invoice. So you, I'm sure, have a contract that you already are using that you could upload into Dubsado. And they'll actually do that for you when you email Dubsado. They could add in up to 10 forms, and they'll help you get started with some of these smart fields. So on this one, for example, we're talking about the client name and you. So meaning between you and the client is what this contract is for. For a wedding purpose, I want to add in the ceremony, location, and the reception details. I just do this just in case if something changed, for example, or if now the ceremony is far away. We want to make sure that this contract is covering those locations specifically. So I'll show you how to do the ceremony location in a moment. For the wedding case, what I like to use is the project smart fields. So if you take a look through all the smart fields under the project, we have like the times that it starts and ends, project address, location name, contact name. Anytime we're thinking about that, I'm thinking of the wedding location name and address. Now, there's not going to be one that says ceremony location, right? So we're going to go make one. We're going to make one that can carry over into everything else. So let me save this. And I'll show you how to make what's called a custom mapped field. If we come into settings, custom map fields, we want to add a ceremony location smart field. So I'm going to make that a short answer and click save. Now, what that means is that when someone fills out the field that says what their ceremony location is, it's going to then carry over to other places. So let's go back to that contract. I'm going to edit this again. So now when I go into these smart fields, we're going to see one that I just made, the ceremony location here. And I'll show you where that comes into play on your proposal on the back end. If it doesn't make sense now, it will when we get to the proposal in a moment, where everything will kind of fill in afterwards. So those were details that I for sure wanted to have. If you wanted to have both client names, you could definitely do that as well. So this, let's say, we want to have, instead of the company name, we want to make sure we have this client's phone number and email. And let's put their partner's name here. So we're going to use the alternate client first name and client's last name. Okay, so it's going to say both partners' names, the primary phone number and the primary email. If you want to include their address here, you can. And this is going to say between you, your business, and your business address. So now the other smart fields that are going to help us out and why we don't have to customize this for every person is using the package smart fields. So if I come into edit here, I'm using smart fields up here that are specific to that invoice. So when a client selects a package on your proposal, that's where we want it to carry over the details of what's included, which is why when we were making the packages, I was making sure to have that description there and the pricing as accurate as possible, because then it can carry over everywhere else. So let's just say, let's go to smart fields. So this is where we can choose from what's included in our list here. So I want to make sure that we have a list of each item name and description. So meaning that it will show, let's say that they selected the gold package, everything that's included, and any add-ons, let's say, for example, that are included. Then the next part, I want to show the job total invoice. So maybe we need it if you think they might often choose items that have tax. You could say here that we want it to show the tax amount only, invoice tax total. invoice total. Let me just make sure. Yes. Total. Okay, great. Okay, and the last one I really love to use is this payment plan. So it's going to show that as soon as they sign this contract, the $1,000 deposit that we had set up will be due. Then it's going to stamp the date 30 days before their wedding to show that the remaining balance is due. So I will show you what this looks like on a real live client account, but using the payment plan, invoice payment plan, is a really nice way to not, again, have to customize each contract, but use the smart fields to customize it for you. Now, everything else should be about the same. If you, for example, had written somewhere like the invoice total is this, let's just say it was here, for example, your invoice total is, you can also put it inside of paragraphs like that. You could bold it and have it stand out so that you and the client can see where it's really personalized to them. But having these here is what's going to save you so much time in the long run. So making sure, I know we're going through this quickly, but making sure you kind of really understand how those smart fields work can really be beneficial. Okay, I think we have everything covered now for all the pieces that go together. So I'm going to use, I have in my shop on my website, a drag and drop proposal template. So this is just the template that I'm going to show you today and how we can get started with the settings and tying everything together now. So I tried to really have this set up here for a wedding photographer or wedding planner where you can really show off your images and really capture your client right at that last step before they're about to book you. So under this template here, I just have some samples of what could be included. So I'm going to pull in the packages that we created. So you'll see here, see how it's kind of nice to have those big headings here broken apart. So I know that I want this to be the gold package first. I'm going to pull in what's included. You can do this two ways here. I chose to write them out here, what's included, like this. You could write it out exactly what's included in the package, or you can use the smart fields to again list out the item names and descriptions, and it will pull it in for you. So you can play around with what you like best. Let me see if I can get that centered. But it is kind of a nice way to show it two different ways. Just depends on your preferences. If you like the bullet points here, that's pulling in from the package itself. If we go back to that package and click on edit, see how these bullet points are here. If I turn that off, it's not going to show them. If I keep it on, it's going to continue to show them on the invoice as well as the package on the proposal. So let's select the next one, silver, and then bronze. And then we'll add in any upgrades that we'd like to have. So in this case, I have 3. So I'm going to add in, I'm going to do the album first. I'm going to do the engagement session. Now I don't need these other ones, but instead of using a checkbox here, I want to use the additional hours of photography. So I'm going to select here additional hours. And this is where I can control. Remember we talked about the quantity of the packages. So like, do we want to allow them to select only up to 3? I would set it as 0 to start with, or maybe they can add on up to 5. Whatever it is your setting is, it's going to allow them to put that in here. So up to 5. It's going to then total it per hour. So let's say it's $150 per hour. If they selected 2 additional hours, it's going to total it up to the $300 per hour. So you can play around with, you know, your containers. We could dive really deep into like the design of the proposals itself, but we're not going to go over that today. I'm just trying to show you all the setting pieces. But when you scroll down to the bottom, this is where we're going to use those smart fields that I've been mentioning over and over and over again to help us with everything else. So if your client filled out a lead form and they're using this, they filled out the form and it's mapped, meaning it says that I know that this box right here says that this is the client's first name. if they have done that already, it's going to fill it in for them. So any details we already have, you don't have to fill in again and again. So I'm just going to click through and make sure that each one is mapped. So this is the client's first name, last name. Their partner's name is mapping to that alternate client contact first name, alternate last name. And remember, if we're using workflows or whatnot, Dubsado really wants you to use one primary email. You can definitely use two if you're using it manually. So you could always add in another field here for a second email, but I like to let them know that this will be the primary contact and their phone number. So remember, these are the fields that we pulled in the contract, which is why I'm making sure that these are correct here. Now, same thing with the client's mailing address. This is mapped to the client address, city, state, and zip code. So I don't want them to be able to change the wedding date here. At this point, I'm assuming they've already filled out your form. You've had a conversation with them. We know that this is the date of their wedding. So I want that to stay set in stone. Now the ceremony one, this is the one that we had just made that custom map field for. So if I want this to show up on the contract, I'm going to go into field mapping. And here it is right here, ceremony location. So as soon as the client fills this in here now in the proposal, on the next step, it's going to fill that in for us. Now the same is true with the reception location and address. All of these are mapped. All right, so now you could play around and go crazy with the design of your proposal and all those things, but where we're going to spend the rest of our focus is on these form settings over here. When you come into the form settings, we can control what's being offered to the client. So if you want to include the contract and the invoice, this is where we need to turn that on. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to include the contract, and I'm going to select the contract that I want to include. If you offer multiple services, again, this may be different contracts, but we're going to pull in that sample one that we were working with. I do want to allow clients to choose multiple packages. Oh, I forgot to show you one more thing. Let me do this really quick because I do want them to be able to offer multiple packages. So I want to go back to that travel fee for a moment. So you'll see here that these are optional for your client to select, right? But I want to add one where it's not optional, like with a travel fee, for example. So I'm going to drag in the elements, the package element into my package right here, and I'm going to select that travel fee. So I'm going to play around with the settings here a little bit. And what I'm going to actually do is remove the select button. And I'm going to center this. And what I'm going to say is that this is an estimated, actually, I think it says that already. Should say estimated travel fee. Just as travel fee. So I'll write estimated here. And that the cost is about the $75 here. Now, this is kind of cool because you can now say pre-selected, I want this to show up on my client invoice, meaning that they are not going to be able to unselect or not select this here. It's going to show up there no matter what, and it's going to show up on their contract that they understand that there's going to be a travel fee. So you can, of course, play around with the design of all of this, of how you want to lay that out for your client. This is where you could let them know final travel fee will be calculated at final invoice, something along those lines. I'll center this here. But so now because it's pre-selected, it's going to be there no matter what. So it's kind of a cool feature that Dubsado has for, especially for wedding pros for that sort of case. I've also used it before with a credit card fee. If your state allows you to put that 3% fee onto your clients, that could be something that's just like a placeholder there so that later on they know it's going to be added in should they choose to pay with a credit card. But I do use it often for travel fees. Now let's go back to our settings over here. So we have our contract. They're allowed to choose multiple packages. So meaning that they could select the bronze and a additional hour of photography or an engagement session because that's not included in that original package. then we want to make sure we are going to include an invoice in this proposal. And this is where our payment plan that we just created comes into play. So I'm going to select the wedding photography payment plan. And I'm just making sure everything looks good. So the other thing we could do is set a expiration date if you wanted to, so that this link after it's sent to your clients would not work after a set number of days. I usually say, somewhere between 7 to 10 days. If you just set the expiration, it will let them know it will expire, but it won't send any emails or anything to your clients. It's a nice option if you'd like to have that happen. So I'll keep it on in this case. And you can customize your alert here once they've completed the form to be more on brand. Thank you so much. I will, if you're going to send a welcome email or something like that, I'll be in touch. I can't wait for your wedding, something along those lines. All right. So I'm going to save and close this. I just want to mention one thing. A mistake I see often is that people are working under templates and customizing for each of their clients here. This, I really want you to think of as like your main copy of your template, your main thing that you're working off of. And under projects is where we can customize as needed for your clients. So let's just go into a sample project. And I'm going to add that form that we just worked on. Here it is right here. And add it into the project. Now, if you wanted to edit anything specific for this client, here's where you can go crazy. You could change out the images to match their venue. You could do, any sort of personalization here that you'd like to like make it feel more personal. But ideally, you don't have to do a lot and things are really pretty much ready to go and ready to send to your clients. So now that email that we used comes into place here. So we're going to click send. And you'll see now those smart fields are pulling in some of the details that we had that I showed you on that canned email template. So this one looks pretty basic, right? It doesn't have the email signature or anything else. If we come down here to this flag, this is where I can find that send proposal email that we had talked about. So this one is blank right here because I didn't have the client's their alternate first name. So this is where I might delete this here. If I only know the primary contact that I'm talking to, you can edit the email as necessary, but you'll see how it's pulling in the project date or the wedding date from this date right here. And let me see if I can open this from here. So you can see what all of our hard work kind of looks like at the end. So we'll see that we have our proposal here, where the client can come in and select what they'd like. Let's say they want those 2 additional hours. Let's say they actually select the bronze. In an engagement session. So now you'll see here at the bottom, it totaled all of that for us. We didn't have to do any of that heavy lifting. If I jump over to the contract now, this is where we'll see that it will, once the client fills in that bottom part of the proposal, it's going to fill in all of their details here. So the client name, address, email, phone number, as well as the ceremony location, the location of their reception. And then it's going to pull in the details that I selected on my package, as well as the total tax and total pricing here. So you'll see it's going to break down. The due date will be 30 days before the wedding date, and then after the contract is signed. So it looks a little different because I'm on as the business owner. See how I get this like almost like error right here? Let me see if I can open it as a see if I could open it as a client. But when the client sees that, all of that will be filled in. Let me see if I can reshare. Just so you can see what it looks like. All right, so I hope you get an idea there of how things can all work together really nicely, how it translates into that one step. So if we spend, an hour or two really setting up those details from the start, it's going to save you so much time in the long run. It will create those invoices for you, create those payment plans set up for you. So it really is such a beneficial way to use with your client experience. Again, you can find me at kellymccracken.co on Instagram or kellymccracken.co for my website. You can also use my affiliate fee of, my affiliate code for an additional 30% off of Kelly McCracken VA. You can get that on top of the sale price that's happening this week for Dubsado. But I hope this was helpful and you hope you learned some tips and tricks that you may not have thought of before. But please let me know if you have any questions. And I really, really hope you found this valuable. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you soon.